You've expressed a lot of faith in the core guys here over the years. As you look back, as you assess it, why do you think those guys haven't been able to push the group over the top here?
That is the difficult question that we've looked back and had different experiences where if you were to just live in a vacuum and just view this one playoff, you may have a different view of our team and the optimism and the closeness of where they were, but we can't think that way now after seeing what we've seen year after year after year. And that's where I'm saying that I do believe that there's a time where the right answer is patience, and then there comes a time where you have to say that you have new information to you, the information has evolved, and you have to adjust your way of thinking. I know the desire's there. I can tell you that every player who has been here this entire time wants to win in Toronto. Some have had opportunities to work elsewhere and have chosen to come back to Toronto. They're dedicated to getting it done here. So I don't question their dedication, but I do question just our ability as a group to get it done in those difficult times. And that's why we have to make some changes, and we'll continue to look at changes with the goal in mind, what makes the Maple Leafs better, not just in the regular season, but come playoff time.
For the past several years, this team has had 4 players that are high priced, that take up about 50% of the salary cap space. Teams that seem to be winning don't seem to be structured that way. Does that philosophy, you talked about having to change the way you think about things, is that one of the things at the top of the list that has to change?
Well, I think, yeah, as we said, the short answer is we have to look at everything. And again, we don't have to revisit history of when those contracts were done and we ran into a pandemic and all the things that happened. We've got, and again, I have to expand the view. I've got a 12-month view of this thing, right? We've got really good players, but it hasn't worked, right? It hasn't worked to date. And again, we're not going to come out here and make emotional decisions and make decisions so that we can have another press conference and look you all in the eyes and said, look at what we've done. That makes no sense. But you have to analyze why it hasn't worked. And certainly, I mean, you can have a viewpoint and say, we've invested in 4 players and you've got X amount of percentage of your salary cap tied up there, and if we spread it all around, you're going to have more depth, all these types of things. We are where we are, okay? So this is the situation we are in right now. Those are really good players. We've got to dig into why we're ending up with the same result year after year after year, and adjust accordingly.
I don't have regret for showing faith in people. I wouldn't put it that way, Dave. As Keith alluded to, when we all come to Toronto, we know, especially where the team is at this stage of their development. I mean, there have been times in Leafs history where they're at a different phase, but if you're becoming a part of the Leafs organization now, you know why you're coming here, and you know what you're getting into. And our fans, not just the ones that live here in Toronto and that come to our games and go to Maple Leaf Square and watch our games on TV, but the way that our fans support us on the road, that's an important and it's a very driving and moving thing to us and to our players. It's you don't want to let them down, you want to deliver. And if I felt that the players felt differently than that, in spite of the fact that they haven't delivered, I might feel differently about them as well. So we have to give them all the tools, and we have to make changes where we think changes are going to help our team. But as far as believing in people and having faith in people, you want to help them see things through. And look, I've been in this game a long time, whether it's myself or the players or staff. We know how it works. We've all seen the good and the bad, and we accept the consequences that might come to any of us. But while you're here, the underlying and the overriding motivation has to be, when you put your head on the pillow at night, is have we made the team better? Have we increased our chances to win the Stanley Cup? And that's what we have to do.
I don't ever think the philosophy was we're going to spend half of our money on a small number of players. Things happen and salary caps didn't grow as we all projected, but we are where we are. Taking out salaries, taking out all the other stuff, I think it might have been you and I in an interview when I first came. I know there's talk of, you know, the core four and all these names that we talk. We don't talk about that internally. But what we have to do is everybody is important. Everybody has to be feel important. And I think what we've had in this roster is we've had, you know, the idea that things have never changed here. I would disagree with. There's been a lot of change, and there's been a lot of change around those core players, obviously. But we have to, and this isn't the players' feelings, but we have to make sure everybody feels important here. This is not, can't go on the backs of 4 individuals, 3 individuals, 2 individuals. This is about the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's not about 1, 2, or 3 people. And salary aside, that was one of the things I really wanted to try to change coming here, is everybody's important. To win here, everybody, you know, winning teams have the unique ability for everybody to feel if they weren't part of it, they wouldn't accomplish their goal regardless of minutes played, dollars that they earn. Everybody's important. And that is what is going to happen here. Forget about what you're, on the 1st and the 15th, what you're cashing. We are not going to have success here, whether the guy at the top of the food chain or number 23 on the list is important, and they are.
When you say that everything is kind of on the table for this summer, safe to assume that includes asking Mitch and John if they'd be willing to waive their no-move clauses, and if so, what's your sense of how receptive they would be to that?
Thanks, Luke. I think it's important to state, as we've discussed even, you know, since the season has ended, that everything is on the table. We will discuss everything. I don't think it serves the Toronto Maple Leafs in any fashion to discuss those things prematurely, to discuss those individuals prematurely. Our focus right now is on finding a new head coach, and certainly that new head coach will have an important voice as part of our decisions going forward. I'm just simply saying that whatever questions you guys ask us here today, generally speaking, are things that we're going to have to consider after the things that we've seen. Brad and Keith are relatively new here, but I am not. And I have seen some of these things over the years. And again, I do believe there's a time for preaching patience, and I do believe there's a time where you have to examine some of the patterns that persist. So everything will be on the table. Not to get into any specifics today, I don't think that serves the Toronto Maple Leafs well.
Do you still believe this core group can win, and if so, why?
Well, that gets back to the essence of the opening statement. I think that when there's a time, again, not to repeat myself, but there's a time where you look at the age and the development of players and you talk about patience. And then there comes a time where you see certain patterns and trends repeat themselves, results repeat themselves. And that's what we have to do this summer. Without getting specific, I've said earlier, it's not our intention here today to single any one individual out or any one small group of this team out. We're talking about the whole team. What we are saying is that it has certainly become evident that we have to assess all of those things and assess whether or not we have to make some very difficult decisions this summer to make the team better. Do you want to follow up?
Yeah, just
yes.
Why now and why not last summer or 2 summers?
It was every summer. It was every summer. Like I said to you, it's not that you don't make those assessments at the end of every season, you know. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5, you make all of those assessments. You take the information that you have at the time and the information that's been brought to you at that time. And what I'm saying to you is, over time, you know, that information, and when you see patterns not change, will you change things around some of your core issues, hoping that this year the results will be different, and they don't. That's when you start having to reassess from a different lens. More information comes to you, different information comes to you. Certain things that you maybe felt in the past start to shift as you get that new information. So it's not that these assessments aren't made in the past, it's that you have to constantly be growing with your information and willing to adapt with your information. And at the end of the day, it's just saying, when we come back here next year, and it might not look it on the first day of camp, it might be in the trade deadline, it might be, but when we're walking into next year's playoffs, knowing that we first have to make the playoffs, but when we're walking in next year to the playoffs, that we're a team that we feel more confident that can get different results.